Hi, I'm Phil Constantino, and this Travels with Phil. We're going to Fort Stanwix National Monument in Rome, New York. You can see it there in the center, just off to the right of where it says Syracuse. This is the map of the Six Nations and Lake Ontario, and it's just to the east of Oneida Lake. And it was designed originally by the British in 1758 to guard the Oneida Carry. And that's a portage that was one of the few spots where you had to go overland when you were traveling on all the small rivers from New York over to Lake Ontario. You can see it on part of that map right there. This is one of the original designs for the fort here, and it took from 1758 to 62 to get the original fort built. There are lots of artifacts available here at this particular fort and a very nice museum. Let's take a look about the trade that went on.
There are so many stories to tell about it that I don't know where to begin. Our claim to fame is the siege period of time and the massacre at Oriskany. What you see behind me are examples of trade items: clothing articles, blankets, knives, plates, soaps, all of the items that would not be found on the frontier. The Sutler's store was the general store of the day. It was the trade center. This part of the country was getting by on the fur trade. The fur trappers and the native Indians would bring their furs in here, and this is where you found products that were being made in the major metropolitan areas of Boston, New York, and Philadelphia, and mainly coming in from Europe.
And again, the Oneida Carry route was a spot about 4 miles long. It was a portage where you went from one river to the other, and if you used all of the local rivers, then you'd be able to go all the way from New York City up to Lake Ontario. So this became an important trading point. It also became a spot to guard the trail itself and an interaction spot with the Iroquois Indians. This is the moat outside the fort, and a nice long look at the fort itself. And you'll see out here, it actually has a moat. Well, a lot of people worked in that moat. I'll show you a little bit about it.
Is my laundry ready?
Not quite yet, missus. It's drying. It's drying.
I'll be back later.
You know, it never ceases to amaze me that the women that live in the fort, why they can't be doing their own laundry.
I know, right? Why do we have to do it?
Well, you know, but you do have to remember we're getting half rations for the work that we do. And that's rather important in case you don't want your stomach to be growling. Now, the other thought is, you know, if they want to be paying us for doing work that a woman should be doing, then you should be happy at least that we have the work to be doing. Yep. So we'll continue to do the washing and the mending as we always do. And if nothing else, we've got the cleanest hands in town.
Definitely.
They have lots of reenactors here.
A lot of times it seems that history is written by the men. So the women, unfortunately, while there and very much an important part of everything, were sometimes forgotten as far as keeping records on what they did. The women especially who would have been down here in the ditch doing the laundry, taking in the mending and the sewing for the soldiers. We might hear about the women of the officers, their wives, who would have lived up in the fort and were of a higher class. But without the washerwomen or the nurses or the cooks of their time, an army marches on its stomach.
The fort stood empty between 1768 and 1776, and with the outbreak of the American Revolution, the colonials moved in, and a big siege took place in August of 1777. The British forces did not win, and this was a big, tremendous victory for the American forces. Let's take another look inside. Travels with Phil continues at Fort Stanwix in Rome, New York. Looking at the front entrance, coming over the moat, palisades, the moat, and the front entrance. Some stories say that the American flag that was raised over the fort during the siege in 1777 was the first time the American flag had ever been flown during battle. Who knows? Here's another video. All right, part two, Fort Stanwix. Look at the apparatus here for raising the moat.
How many people are there?
There's 22.
These drums roll down, and then the chain comes up. The guard actually challenges you as sort of the to give you some flavor of what's going on. Very complicated inside, not complicated, but lots of different spots to it. These are the Janssen De Barracks. There's quarters lined with hay. 40 soldiers would be stationed here. Actually, a lot darker than this video makes it look like until you get to the actual door. But again, this continues to be Fort Stanwix, the Janssen Barracks.
Keep your feet.
This is one of the corner pieces here at the fort, and I'll have one of the rangers tell you a little bit more about that.
In each of the corners of the fort, there is what the military called a bomb-proof. The bomb-proofs were the dedicated, as we might say today, storage areas meant specifically to have different sorts of supplies put into them. And basically, they are a room built like the casemate out of great big heavy stout timbers, but to give them even more protection, then the earth is heaped up over the top of them and then sod laid over that to keep everything in place.
And this is a very detailed fort. There's lots of different rooms and settings and spots for it. So this was a full-fledged operation here out in what then was the frontier of the United States. Some of the reenactors doing cannon work there. And you see here there are lots of different quarters. The missionaries' quarters had an active missionary effort. These is the Sutler Shop, and that's basically the trading post. And we're going to have one of the park rangers tell you a little bit more about what a sutler did at a fort.
This is the Sutler Shop, and a sutler is just an 18th century term for merchant or trader or barterer. Many of the sutlers that came out to this fort area were hired by the military in some capacity or another to keep up relations with the local Indians who were acting as scouts. So many of the items in this room are based off of items that were actually found here at the time period. We have fur, which we know was traded extensively along the pathway called the Oneida carry that this fort was built to protect. We have trinkets like redware and whiteware, different types of pottery that would have been used at the time period, and basically different qualities. And then some of my favorites are replica fruit because, as I was saying earlier, Peter Gansevoort was recorded as having fruit shipped here. And that's important because you got to avoid scurvy. But there's really nothing necessarily unique about this room other than the fact it's a place to show off all of the cool things that would have been going back and forth.
The central part of the fort is called the parade grounds. Here's a ranger to explain that.
Well, we're actually standing right here on the parade ground, the official military name for this open center area of the fort. And the parade ground is where official duties would take place by smaller groups of soldiers, so a small unit drill, small unit inspections. It is also the place where punishment would routinely be given out, and part of punishment at the time was not just a physical punishment, but you wanted to add public disgrace or humiliation to it, so this allowed you to form a number of soldiers up in the middle of the parade ground to witness the punishment as to what they could potentially get if they thought about breaking the rules and regulations. And the punishment itself centered around the whipping post here, where a soldier, having been sentenced to get a number of lashes by the cat of nine tails on his bare back, that being a whip of 9 pieces of leather with 9 knots in each of the pieces of leather, he would be tied to the post and then given anywhere from 39 up to 100 lashes on his bare back.
That's a lot of lashes. Lots of different barracks here. Different ones had different quality depending on what you were doing. I believe this was used for the people that ran the artillery rather than just the regular soldiers. And again, lots and lots of different rooms. They have lots of signs out here. This was completely reconstructed. It burned down in 1781, was rebuilt between 1812 and 1828 during the American War there. And then was abandoned again, and then the National Park Service came in 1974 and rebuilt it completely. These are the commander's quarters. Well, obviously, rank has its privilege, a lot better than where the soldiers were. And this was the dining area and also the staff room. And so you can see some of the old era pieces in there from flags and etc. They did have surgeons or a doctor's quarters here, and where they would come in and work on whatever problems that the people there might have. Now, the casements were, again, the places that were built along the edges of the outer wall, still had heavy brick. This is one of the few spots where they have some of the original building left. This is the original fireplace, or what's left of it here, and this is toward the bottom of the building. Interesting to see all the original parts there. And then moving along here, this is the spot where the recreational area for the regular soldiers happened on a, just a routine basis. You got to go because you spend a lot of time there in this spot. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up by clicking on the button below. You're welcome to leave comments below as long as the language is family friendly. And finally, if you'd like to see more of my videos, please subscribe to my channel by clicking the button over on the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you again for watching.